Welcome to our Week 2 Advent Devotional. I'd like to begin today by asking you to imagine with me the experience of traveling through a long, unlit tunnel. You leave the light of day and enter the dark tunnel. It's quite difficult to see. Your eyes try to adjust, but you still are unable to see. As you continue to travel along, logically you know that the end of the tunnel lies ahead and that you will see light again. After all, that is how tunnels work. But as you go on and on, at least a bit of doubt begins to arise. Will what you know is supposed to happen really happen? Will you see the light again? The experience of being in a dark place with an uncertain outcome relates to the topic of this week's devotion. This week we are taking a look at the prophets of the Old Testament, specifically the prophet Isaiah. And we're asking the question, what is the significance of the prophets on the journey to the birth of Jesus? The situation into which the prophet Isaiah spoke many, many centuries ago was a particularly dark situation. Isaiah was speaking to the Israelites, God's chosen people. They were a people who had been given a promise and given a hope. But at this time, they probably felt anything but chosen, anything but hopeful. The Israelites had disobeyed God. They had been attacked by the Assyrian people, and they had been exiled from their land. They had found that their villages were burned, their women had been beaten, their children had been killed, and they found themselves in a very dark situation. I would have to think that about this time the Israelites would be wondering, will what we know is supposed to happen? Will the promise be fulfilled? Will we ever see light again from this darkness that we currently are in? And into this situation, the prophet Isaiah comes and he brings a message. And this message is one that we can now read in the 9th chapter of the book of Isaiah. Isaiah said, "The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of the shadow of death, a light has dawned. For to us a child is born. To us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders. And he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace." Now that is a message of light and hope coming into darkness. On the journey to the birth of Jesus, the prophet of Isaiah serves as a glimpse of light into the longing and waiting for a promised Savior. He is a hopeful song in the silence and bleakness of the exile. Isaiah makes the point that despite our circumstances and what day-to-day life may look like, God is still active, God is still at work, and God's plan will ultimately prevail. And Isaiah helps us to know who this promised Savior is, the one who we now know already has come and who will come again. He is Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. During this Advent season, I hope we will let the message of the prophet Isaiah be significant to us. Advent is a time in which we celebrate the birth of Jesus, the Christ, our Savior, who has already come to the world to bring love, joy, hope, and peace. At the same time, Advent is a season in which we long and we wait for the second coming of Jesus Christ. Isaiah can be a reminder to us that despite what our circumstances look like, whether they be bright or dark, God is still active, God is still at work, and God's plan will ultimately prevail. God is faithful. God is who God says he is, and God will do what he has said he will. Thanks be to God.